We'll see if
and that's Motzei Isha Mar Mimaveh, so that seems like the opposite.
We'll see in a minute.
That's the whole word. Motzei or matzah.
We'll see in a moment.
No, but I'm saying Motzei usually has the opposite connotation.
Right.
As it should.
Exactly. We'll fit into the...
Yeah, we'll see in a second. That's a very good question. So, what's the issue here? They brought it up already, so we'll say it. That the reason, so if so, why even get married? Like if it's a search continually, why do you need the marriage? Just get married every day. Do it again. So why do we do this in the first place? Because Chazal tell us that there is a special, call it a segula if you want, we'll say in a moment what it means. There's a special segula in that moment when you do decide to get married, that at that moment you're selfless. You've reached some bittul. And that moment has to live with you when you have difficulties at this moment in connecting with your spouse. That if you have difficulties, you have to remember that moment when you were under the chuppah, and that is a moment where the self wasn't there. Meaning I didn't do it in order to gain something. I did it because it was a mitzvah. It's chazaka on a Jew, a Yid, when he does a mitzvah, that he does it because Hashem told him to do it. So there's a special segula that we do. That's why we do it in front of people. It's a big thing to have it at least in front of 2 eidim, and then in certain situations 3 eidim and 5 eidim, depending on the situation. And to have these people there so that there's that moment where everybody testifies, and you also remember it, that my connection started from a selfless place. It started from the fact that Hashem gave me infinite strength in order to get married, in order to perform this very important mitzvah, the first mitzvah in the Torah. So that has to live with you all the time. That's the matzah in the past. But really, every day when you wake up, there has to be a feeling that I'm searching for something. Okay? Amar Rabbi Chanina, לעת מצוא זו אישה, שנאמר מצא אישה מצא טוב. במערבה, in Eretz Yisrael, כי נשיא v'nishitata, when a man would get married, Amrele, they would ask him, matzah or motzeh. So which is it? Now when you're under the chuppah, not every day, but the moment that you're under the chuppah, what are you? A matzah or motzeh? Meaning, it's not about the past or the present. There it's not about because you're getting married right now. So it's not a question about what happened in the past and what's happening in the present. It's a different question. What's the question? Matzah dichtiv, matzah isha, matzah tov, efek ratzon me'avaya. Like we said, motzeh dichtiv, motzeh ani mar mimavet et ha'isha. Which one is it? Now it's not clear from the Gemara what the difference is, except that certainly the 2 verses are talking about 2 different situations. The question is what's making it different.
It's interesting you asked that under the chuppah. The guy's getting married. Obviously, it's matzah.
Obviously, it's motzeh right now.
Oh, but I'm
in
saying,
terms of time, it's right now.
But if he was motzeh and
but if he was married, exactly. So what is the issue here? So the issue here is something a little bit different. So I'll give it's after many pages here. Who can tell me what's the difference between matzah and motzeh in the verse? Between matzah and isha, there's nothing. But in the motzeh ani is a famous word that the moment that it's ani is stuck there in the middle, then the isha is mal mimavet. It's telling you that if the I is between the finding and my wife, then it'll become bitter like death. Even more bitter than death. So it's saying, like today, here we would say that the scientific picture, the partial scientific picture today of how sex of the offspring is determined, that it only depends on the male. So here, that's the beginning here. That depends on you. And if you go seeking to find yourself, motzeh ani, to find myself, then every woman will be, doesn't matter who you chose, be the best woman in the world, will be more bitter than death. Because what's really making your life bitter and what's making it so difficult is the search for the I. That's why we make such a big inyan in Chassidus about bittul. Bittul doesn't mean that I'm not here and I shouldn't do. On the contrary, bittul is what Moshe Rabbeinu is. He's the vanachnuma. He's the one who knows bittul more than anybody else, and he's the person who did more than anybody else in this world. That he took the people out of Mitzrayim and he brought the Torah down 40 years in the Midbar. It's nobody who did more. To be bittul is not to do. To be bittul is to feel that I have a shlichus in this world. So part of my shlichus, like any mitzvah, is to be a husband. It's my shlichus. It's not just a natural state of affairs, right? There's also the natural state of affairs. But the natural state usually doesn't get you very far. It can take you so far. But in the end, what carries you through the day and what carries you through life is the feeling that I have a shlichus from Hashem, that I came down into the world to do something. So shlichus is a feeling, bittul is a feeling of from above to below. It's coming down into reality. Okay, so this is a general introduction. So now we want to get into this a little bit more into what it's saying. So let's see the first note here. So this pasuk Matzah Isha Matzah Tov Ve'afek Ratzon Me'avai is from Mishlei 18:22. There's a beautiful allusion here that if you count the letters and the words, right? How were the first Chachamim called? The very first Chacham called Sofrim. Why were they called Sofrim? Because they counted how many letters were in the Torah. They knew it. You told them a pasuk, they immediately knew how many letters, how many words in it. One would say it was a necessary thing. The Torah Shabbal Peh, the beginning of Torah Shabbal Peh, is to know what the nusach in the Torah Shabbal is. It's a very simple thing. Okay? The first thing you need to know, okay, between Torah Shabbal and Torah Shabbal Peh, the first thing you need to know about Torah Shabbal is to know the correct nusach. That's Torah Shabbal Peh. So the first thing you need to know is how many letters, how many words. It's a good way to remember if I'm writing it out correctly when I write out a Torah scroll. Okay? So one way of remembering it is how many letters, how many words. So when you do this to this pasuk in Mishlei, as yesh bepasuk zayin tivot v'kafei otiyot. So it's a very beautiful remez that the zayin and kafei together they spell the word zacha. And that's exactly what we know, that Zacha or Zarto, the first Rashi on the relationship between a man and a woman, is Zacha or Zarto, Lo Zacha Kenegdo. It's like one of those aliens from Mars. Everybody is excited. Yeah, the whole family is. Okay, so we have this simple idea that it depends on you again. Whether she'll be an Ezer or Kenegdo depends on how the person is himself. Zacha. Zacha or Zarto. It's my work. There's a very important thing that comes from this. It's just Bramfen from the Kfar. He also, I think he writes in English also. He just brought a new letter from the Rebbe that I didn't see until now. I knew there was such a letter because I'd heard it, but I never saw the letter. And the Rebbe writes that Beruba deruba shel hamikrim ba'ayot shlom bayit tluim ba'ish. That in the vast majority of the cases, the problems of Shlom Bayis are the result of the man's actions. In other words, don't be a kolban, don't feel that you're, what's the word in English, how do you say it today? That I have no control, that I'm, what would be the word? When a person feels that he's a victim. So don't victimize yourself. And the famous saying from the Baal Shem Tov even, that Isha Ra'a lo terutz. That even if she is a bad woman, she's a bad person, today we say a bad person, it's not an excuse. You still have the duty to lezakech yourself. because that's what you came down into the world for. Today people don't believe in this because there's internet, right? So it ruined everything. But it's not true. Every generation had its own problems. we didn't invent the problems.
There are eight. No, there's 8 words in this passage.
No, not this one. This one. What's that? Okay. So it's up to me, and it's a feeling that, again, it's not to place the blame, because a victim is somebody who has feelings of shame and of guilt. By definition, if you're a victim, in Hebrew we say kolban. So what's the main type of kolban? Kolban Hashem. That I have some guilt with me. On the contrary, guilt is the result of being the victim. It's not to place blame. To free yourself from victimization is to take back the most important thing that Hashem put into the world. What's the most important thing that He put into the world? Free choice. You have to feel that you're free to decide your fate. I don't know if you can decide who you'll be, but you can decide what your fate will be. And maybe you can't change. If I have a crooked nose, I don't know how to change it. If I have a crooked teeth, maybe it can be changed. But if I have a crooked heart, I might not be able to change it. And yet, even with a crooked heart, even if things are not the way they should be, a person can decide to act differently. And that way he changes his fate, even though he might still be plagued by what he feels inside. It's not perfect. It's not the way it should be. Rebbe Rashab, on his 48th birthday, he wrote in his Rishimus, in his journal, I look today on my birthday at all my midos, and there's not one that's rectified. Ein achat shehi kfi shetzarcha liot. Rebbe Rashab. So the person shouldn't feel victimized by the fact that he has certain qualities. Some of them are good, some of them not so good. Victimization leads to the lack of believing that I can be or act differently than how I act because of what's victimizing.
Takes away your responsibility.
And what about her?
Sorry?
What about her?
First of all, we have to deal with ourselves.
That's what you just said. The problem is us. That's what you just said. The problem is us. We're the problem.
Like we say, there's no bad students. There's only not so good teachers. When it comes to the relationship, the mashpia is the male. The woman wants to receive something good. And if he's not giving something good, she'll act in response. This is what this is saying. Zacha ozarto, lo zacha kenegdo. And so in that sense, she's my mirror. She shows me where I'm holding. Now I have a real problem, and my wife is far better than me. So I don't have a mirror. I have a problem. I have to go look at it. I have to go teach in different places to see how people react to me. Even that doesn't help. But in general, your wife shows you where you're holding. And again, holding doesn't mean that everything's lost if it doesn't look good. Holding means that I'm not a victim, not of her behavior, and even not of my own, and not of my circumstances. And everything can change as long as I accept the fact that Hashem gave me free will. My will is free. I can decide to act the way I want. I can decide. Very hard sometimes, but I can change things. And things don't change overnight, but they change. Okay. This is a famous thing that the Chazal bring in brachos about what does the word tov mean, they ask. En tov v'la'or. Shenemar v'yar Elokim ta'or ki tov. So what did they do there? They look at the first instance of the word in the Chumash and they say that defines the word. So tov is always light. So if we look for the first time that the word matzah appears, and again, this is how Shlomo HaMelech, I guess, learned it. Okay, matzah isha matzah tov is like in response to the first time that it says matzah in the Chumash. What's the first time? Akol alecha chal pticha, hi b'pasuk u'la'adam lo matzah ezer kenegdo. And this is a pasuk atov b'sipur hashani shel Maaseh Bereshit. Right? There are two accounts of creation. The first one in chapter 1, the second one starts from chapter 2 and the fourth pasuk. From there to La'isha lo matzah, there are 17 verses. So it's the Tov equals 17 pasuk in the second story. And the second story we know is mostly about becoming a mensch, in the sense of separation and rejoining. That's what the main thing is about. The second story is full of lack. It's full of things that don't work yet. And it starts off that there's no rain, because there's no man to pray for rain. And then it goes into Hashem trying to make zivugim. He comes to Adam, he can't find something for him. So in the end he has to separate him into two, and then he finds his wife. Okay? So the second story is so the good part about there being lack in the world is that man he's not born automatically with his wife. He's not born with his other half with him at the same time. It used to be that way. Who was like that? The original thing is apart from Adam, so Hevel and Cain were born with their sisters, with the women that they married. The same thing, according to at least one shita, is with the Shvatim. The Shvatim also were married to their twin sisters. But the Torah says that's Chesed. Chesed is a brother with a sister is a type of arayos, and it's called a Chesed. Why is it called a Chesed? Because Olam Chesed Yibaneh. To begin to build the world, you need chesed. What does chesed mean? It gives you without any conditions. Unconditional giving. So there, they didn't have to look far. Right in front of them. Here it is. This is the woman that I need to marry. By the way, one of the reasons why we treat children differently than we treat adults, because we're giving them years of chesed. We have to give a person in order for the person to be strong, to be robust when he grows up as an adult, to be healthy. There have to be years in which you give unconditionally. And there's no conditions. I'm not going to not give you food. You can't go to your room without
stand in the
eating.
corner.
No, stand in the corner mainly, but I'm sending you to your room to sleep without food. It's like shagas. If a person's 14, 15, maybe. But for a little child to do that, that's devastating. Because a child needs to feel that all his needs are taken care of without any conditions, without any tests of whether he's like this or like that. And people say, you don't have to spoil, you don't have to give more than needs. You don't have to raise somebody on sweets. You're doing them a disfavor. But the basic things that are needed, love and care and physical needs, have to be given unconditionally. And in most people's lives, that happens. Some people, that doesn't happen. For instance, if they lose a parent or two parents at a very young age, so it might be that they don't have that. And the Baal Shem Tov was somebody who raised himself, you might even say, without those years of chesed. He had to make do with 5 years. Usually the minimum is 7 years. But the Baal Shem Tov had only 5. And later in life, he probably said that because of this, he understood other people's needs. Because he himself didn't have that chesed. So he could understand where a lot of people's needs are coming from, that maybe they also didn't receive what they needed. So this is the chesed, this is the good part of not finding. Even though the first generations immediately found, because they had chesed. We don't have chesed. Same thing the Mishnah says about the first 10 generations. Why did Hashem not punish them? To show how much patience He has. Why? Because you can't build the world if you don't build it with chesed. And chesed means whatever you do, it's fine. I don't care. I will still provide for you. So certainly not going to take away your sustenance. And this is the pasuk. ולאדם לא מצא עזר כנגדו, ויפל השם אלוקים תרדמה על האישה, כן? על האדם. So that's the pasuk in which she's created. So it's tov, it's good. We'll skip the parentheses. ולאדם לא מצא עזר כנגדו, נאמר בהמשך ויקרא אדם שמות לכל הבהמה ולעוף השמיים לכל חיית השדה. This comes in as a continuation to the fact that He gave names to everything. כאשר ויבן אלוקים את הצלע אשר לקח מן האדם לאישה והביאה אל האדם, אז ויאמר אדם זאת הפעם מעצם עצמי ובשר מבשרי, לזאת יקרא אישה כי מאיש לוקח הזאת. The naming came after He named all the animals in the world, or whichever ones He encountered. So He gave them names, and He also gave a name to His wife, to His newly found wife. He gave her a name. What does this mean? Why is giving something a name so important? When you say somebody's name, what are you doing? So we know this from the Baal Shem Tov. He said, "Why is not my name Yisrael?" Because when I came into the world, I found the people, the Yidden, as if they were fainted, as if they're unconscious. So the big segula to wake somebody, to give him will to live, is to whisper his name in his ear. But the name, the kronim, it's like Mikrei Kodesh. Why do we call the Chagim Mikrei Kodesh? Shabbos is Mikrei Kodesh because it draws down some light that enlivens that day in the year differently than other days. So when you call something, to call something by its name is real, or just to call it is to give it purpose, to give it meaning, to give it will. Yeah. So when He gave her a name, Lazoti Karei Isha Ki Meish Lukach Hazot, He's basically giving her purpose, like we said. That's the important thing, that a lot of times, and men forget this, that even if they have a very active wife, somebody who's very talented and she works by herself, and Baruch Hashem today there's emancipation, and women can do anything they want.
Emancipation.
Emancipation. I thought you were going to say something else.
Escalation.
Okay. So it's very interesting. So that play on words, we'll come to it sometime. But nonetheless, there's a certain sense of purpose that can only come from her connection with her husband. And that sense of purpose usually is where, and again, this is why it's so it's such a struggle for men. Because where does a woman get her sense of purpose? When the man's, like, what does she need the man for? What does she need him for? Like, physically, in practice.
Fill her up.
To make a house. She can't make it by herself. That's why the Rambam starts. He says, first of all, you buy a house, then you got a livelihood, and then you marry a woman. So what's he trying to say? Today we don't do that. We do the opposite. Okay? But you don't have to understand literally. Obviously, he meant literally. You can also darshan him a little. That he's saying that you have to, first of all, make a house. You have to understand that your relationship with your wife has to be built on this notion that you're making a house together. Second to that is the fact that there is all the spiritual sustenance that there is in this house. The parnasa buchanit. And finally, there's the physical needs. But first of all, there has to be a feeling that she has a house, she has a home. And the home doesn't have to be in Eretz Yisrael. You know, the Rebbe said that you should own your house. It's a big deal. From the very early years, the Rebbe told people in Eretz Yisrael, you should buy, strive to buy. Don't leave it as rent. In Chutz Haaretz, it's a different cheshbon. In Eretz Yisrael,
What's the reason? Because you have more property than yourself.
I don't know if he said a reason. I know that anybody who listened to him only
The
profited.
prices went up.
They only
buy
profited.
now because it's going to.
So that also may be a reason. I don't remember him saying a reason. I remember that it was like two things that should know about buying. One is that in Eretz Yisrael you should own your home, and the other thing is that you don't buy new cars. Everybody heard this?
The Rebbe said so?
Yeah.
Huh?
Never to buy a new car.
Really?
Okay. Mamash, there he said mamash it's to throw money away. Why? Because we all know that the first 3 years the depreciation is about a third of the value of the car.
Like the first 3 minutes.
3 years.
As soon as you drive it off the
No,
lot,
I said,
it goes
you
down like
it
20%.
goes down 20%. Again. But the first 3 years you lose 35% on the value. So the Rebbe said it's mamish throwing money away because after 3 years they work fine. There's no, if there wasn't some pagam in the manufacturing, which you uncover anyway in the first year or so, and any person who tests cars will know that something happened to it. The car is fine after 3 years. It's just the same. It's just you can clean it. You need to clean it more. But in any case, chaval on the cases. Again, it's like something that's consumerism. And since you obviously don't buy it for that satisfaction, you buy it in order to use it. You'll use it in good health just as much as if it's when it's new. So there must be a clock here somewhere. Okay, so.
You can go over.
No, I can't because I have to go take my children from school. Okay. Purpose in the world, but she also does. By the way, what name should you use? It's not a curiosity. What do people call their wives? So in English they're all. But in Hebrew it's in Hebrew it's what happens is after you have children, she begins to become called mama or ima. So that's good, but it's even better to use the name because the real name is when I hear my name being called. How many times is your name called during the day? Very few. Your children call you Abba, and if your wife also calls you Abba, and here and there you see people, and we don't always use each other's names. But if it's a smula to waken a person up, then it's a good thing to call your children and your wife by their names. It's a good thing. Again, it's not the most important thing in the world.
Better to call it.
Sorry?
Said it's better to call it.
Okay. I'll say it another way. Why this is particularly important for your wife. When two men meet, how do they introduce each other? So they say, my name is so-and-so, and my name is so-and-so, what do you do? Men are about, what's my tafkid, what's my role, what's my occupation. That's how we define each other. When two women meet, that's not the issue.
They just talk.
It's just, who are you? It's more about who are you. What's your name becomes who are you, not what's your occupation. Okay? They're looking for a different type of connection. That connection is shaykh more to the name than to the occupation. That's why men almost don't use names in general. Because I see you already not as the individual that you are, but as the role that you play in the world. And you have a certain role. In my, so I see Gedalia, I don't see Gedalia. I see somebody I've known for so many years in a certain status and capacity. Okay? I'm used to seeing him in a certain table in Kfar Chabad, sitting in a certain place. That's it. That's how I say it. Gedalia, okay, I remember the name, but and men are also very, in general, less adept at remembering names. In any case, so don't feel bad about it. שעל ידי זה מתגלה הרצון העליון, but it's also to reveal that Hashem has purpose in the world. באותו נברא, לא תוהו בראה לשבת יצרה, בחינת ויפק רצון מהוויה. So naming his wife was to reveal the higher purpose of his very existence. So if a person feels, if I feel that I have purpose outside being married, so I'm a little confused. Because I may have purpose, but I'm not fulfilling Hashem's purpose. Because Hashem's purpose in creating the world was lo tohu bra. He didn't create it in order to be desolate. It's not. It shouldn't be desolate. We usually say midbar is like a desert. What we mean is desolate means that there's no connection between things, that nothing grows, and in order for something to grow, there has to be connection between things. So if there's no connection here between me and a woman, so that nothing's growing, in a sense. Okay. Now we're going to get into the main model that we have here. This was all just introductions, a little bit to get us going. The main model here is one that appears throughout Chassidus. It's the most. If I had to ask somebody, what is Chassidus? Into how many things does Chassidus divide everything? Into how many parts? Okay, one option.
Three.
Theoretically, you could choose any number, right? So you said the one that I'm thinking of, which appears everywhere, from beginning to end. Or if you take the Tanya, it says pretty much the same thing. Three things. Why? Called Memale, Sovev, and Atzmus. That's like the. Whenever you talk about Chassidus, like Chassidus as opposed to Halacha, Chassidus doesn't just mean Chabad. It means the whole way of Pnimius Torah. Pnimius Torah divides everything into three. Halacha divides everything into two, which are four. Shnaim Shem Arba. The Rambam, who didn't know the Pnimius Torah that we know, his favorite number is four, because in the end he's a Rambam. He's a halachic mind. The halachic mind always has Shnaim Shem Arba, Shnaim Shem Arba, two there are four. Connected to Shem Havaya, it's very good. But in general, it's to divide things into two that then divide into four. In Pnimius, the Pesach Eliyahu, right, Rosh Toch Sof. In Pesach Eliyahu, what does he tell us? There's three axes: Kav Yamin, Kav Smol, and Kav Emtza. And that's the world of Tikkun. So there has to be three things. Okay. So now when we look at the relationship between a husband and a wife, there are what we call three levels of relationship. And at which level you are depends, like we said before, on how you are able to refine yourself. Okay? Now, before we say what they are, we have to say something in general. The relationship that I have with my wife is basically a reflection of the relationship that I have with Hashem. With Hashem. It's the same thing as what we say, that how can I judge how my relationship with Hashem is? I have to look at my relationship with other Yidden. But out of all the Yidden, the one that's closest to me is my wife. So if I want to gauge how my relationship is, I have to look at how my relationship is with my wife. So there's many ways you can relate to something. What's the big problem with relating to Hashem? The big problem is that to really relate to Hashem, you have to relate to something that's undefinable and infinite. It's always, if you want to say something, if you want to use a word, that there was a famous Jewish philosopher who built his whole philosophy on this. Hashem is always the other. He's always the acher. Acher also means that he has a chayut. He's always the one that's also responsible for everything. But he's always otherness, because as much as I can never grasp what Hashem really is, as much as I think I understand Hashem, I don't fully understand it. How can you create a relationship with something that's always other? It's always different than everything you understand. By the way, that's how most men would say their relationship with their wife is. I don't get it. It's always other.
They're really other.
Okay? So it's a good proof that if I can relate properly to my wife, I can relate properly to Hashem. It's not because I understand her. Maybe it's because the chap is that I learn how to live with something that I can never fully understand. Huh?
Yes, Shlila, you saying?
It's not even Yidiyas Shlila.
Bissel.
Atzmus. How do you approach Hashem's Atzmus? So we have an answer in the Idra, in the Zohar. He says there is Reuta de Liba. There's the will of the heart. There's a point in the heart that's always connected. From that point, a lot can grow. So there is a certain point that you can be connected, but it's not through the mind. It's not through the understanding. Leit machshavat tfisa b'chlal. I can't understand Hashem through my mind, but I can hold on to Him through my heart. So these three levels are basically going to be three levels of relationship between a husband and a wife, based on how I expect the relationship to be. The simplest levels, of course, that what do I want from her? What do I want from Hashem? Stuff.
What?
More than stuff. What do I want from Hashem?
Be good to me.
To be good to me. Let's say He's not good to me. What's the least I want from Him?
Don't be bad.
Don't be bad. Don't help me, but don't do anything negative. Okay? The second level is that I want Him to be good. What's the highest level? The Rebbe has many sichas about this. Maimarim. The Maimarim I very much recommend because I learned it this year for Yud Gimel Tammuz. It's from Tafshin Kaftes, and it's called Tfilah L'Moshe. That's the Dibur Matchil, and the Rebbe starts with what the Rebbe Rashab explained about this, that it's Tfilah Le'ashir. It's a person who's wealthy. And he says, what does it mean to be wealthy? It means to be connected to the Atzmus. I don't need anything. I have the strongest relationship with you, but because it's not based on what I need from you. Because I'm related to you, I'm connected to you because I love you yourself. And when I love the atzmus of something, I don't need anything back from it. I'm wealthy in my love. It's love that's full of wealth. Not sending you to see movies, but when I was young, I saw movies. So there's a very good movie that I saw once. That was the anti-love story of Hollywood. And it was about a young man who was very much in love with a woman. He tried to court her for a long time and completely failed again and again and again from the time he was 6 years old till he's 28 or 29. And when he fails the last time, something happens to him. And he writes one last, he calls it my last love letter. He says, all the time I've been writing you bad love letters. Bad love letters say I need you. I want something from you. A good love letter is to tell you how much I love you because I don't need anything from you. The fact that you exist, that for me is the fulfillment of my love. That I have an object for my love that I'm not objectifying as how it's going to serve me. It's just the very fact that you exist. So when I come to Hashem and I daven that way, Tfilah L'Moshe, says the Rebbe, that's the level even after even the Yemos HaMashiach. Yemos HaMashiach is only the Sovev. But Tchias HaMesim is the Atzmus. It's a whole new level of relationship between, and the idea here is that this is exactly the level that you can enact now with your wife. That level of love and connection that's not dependent on anything. It's avasha not tluya b'davar. It's I don't need to receive anything. Truthfully, she'll also be thankful. But that's, we'll talk about that next time. Okay, so the three levels we'll see them next time. And sorry, I don't remember. If I would have remembered, I would have.